Good evening, everybody. Nice to have you with us. Thank you for coming. My name is Mary Adossides. I'm chair of Brent Council. This is our first public meeting this year, and we're very pleased to have it on the subject of Palestine, which is very much in the news. We all have been following the Labour Party conference, and we're very pleased to see Jeremy Corbyn's final shot in his final speech, saying that if Labour was elected, they would recognise the state of Palestine. So that is a huge, huge development. Tonight we have with us 4 excellent speakers, and I'd like to thank them very much for coming, because I know they were at the conference for the last 3 days, so it's a pleasure to have them with us. We've got Hugh Lanning, who's here on my right, who is chair of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. Then Kiri Tunks, who is from the NUT president, which is part of the NEU, the National Education Union. We are hoping that Salma is on her way. She's just texted one of our members in the audience saying she's just coming, and she's a criminal barrister and external consultant for the Palestine human rights organization, Al-Haq. And on my left, we have David Rosenberg, speaker from the Jewish Socialist Group. I would also invite Graham Durham, who's one of our local Labour Party activists, to speak for 5 minutes about his recent trip to Palestine. Just a few points before we start. We have a film crew here, filmmaker here, and can you just indicate if you object to being filmed? Can you put your hand up if you don't want to be in the film? Well, that makes it easy for you. No problem. We're going to ask that you avoid taking photographs, because we don't know how members of the audience feel about being photographed without having agreed. I've got Graham here and Joanne, who are running a raffle. And do you want to say something very quickly about the raffle, Graham?
Well, we're not having a collection, because, you know, we're a very friendly sort of organisation. So do be generous and buy some more raffle tickets. Only £2. Look at the crowd, you're bound to win something. Great prizes, bottle of whiskey, etc., etc.
And the money will go to the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. This is a meeting organised by Brent Council and Brent Palestine Solidarity Campaign, and it's been a pleasure working with Brent Palestine Solidarity Campaign, advertising this meeting, organising this meeting, leafleting with members of Palestine Solidarity Campaign. So I'd like to thank them for all the hard work they put in organising this meeting. So now we're going to start, and I'm going to invite each speaker in turn to speak for 10 minutes, up to 15 minutes max, to introduce their subject, their bit of the topic, and then we will, once the 4 speakers have spoken and Graham has done his 5 minutes, we will do the raffle. And then we'll go to questions and contributions. 3 minutes to each member of the audience. And I've got a clock here, because I will time you very carefully. Thank you again, and let's start. Hugh.
Mary, thanks very much, and thanks to all of you it's nice to have the invite. And I think it is, as you get older, one thing drives out another, doesn't it? So I was, Brent Trades Council, where's that? Come out, and I come out and see the Brunswick. And I thought, heavens, because 40 years ago I was a long-haired student at Middlesex Poly, and I used to come across regularly and get me chip butty and go on the picket line and so on, and I just didn't put 2 and 2 together. So it's great to be back at an area that's got such a strong labour movement tradition, but also speaking at a meeting on Palestine. At that time, South Africa was the sort of, if you like, the big international issue that I was involved in the anti-apartheid movement, but even then, in '67, Palestine was under military occupation, the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem and so on. Party conference and the TUC, so apologies if I flag a little bit as the meeting goes on, but I think there's been a tipping point actually that's taken place at both of those that give me really encouragement about the solidarity movement and how we can build. And I want to focus a little bit more around the solidarity movement rather than focus too much on events within Palestine, because I know some of the other speakers are going to talk about that in a little more detail, but it was absolutely stunning at the Labour Party conference. I mean, we had our PSC stall there, we had our fringe meeting on the Sunday night, hundreds and hundreds of people. We couldn't get everyone in to the room that we had, and we had developed this strategy idea from last year's conference where we had PSC lanyards you wore around your neck with your credentials on. And we got rid of over 1,000 last year, and we thought that's a good idea because it's a good way of people identifying that they were. So this year we took 2,500 and they all went. And we could tell there was a buzz around Palestine, and people, we were getting senior trade union and other figures wanting to come and speak at our meeting rather than denying the opportunity to speak at our meeting. And it had a feel, and you could tell, because there's a procedure which is arcane, but to get a motion onto the floor of conference, if it hasn't been going for months and months, it's called a contemporary motion. It's like an emergency motion, and it has to be something that's taken place in recent weeks and so on, and then conference gets to vote on it. And there's only 4 motions that the constituencies can take on it, and the constituencies voted for Palestine to be one of the motions that got debate, which is why there was a discussion. Now, I got likened as being as old as Keir Harding at our fringe meeting, because I said I can never remember Palestine being discussed as a motion at Labour Party conference. The issue was sometimes secretly sneaked in, but always it was blocked, it never got onto the floor of conference, and there was never a discussion that took place. And we thought this is unprecedented, and it is. And there's been some suggestion that this was because of all these Corbynistas who've joined the Labour Party and come rushing to the fray. Well, I can say that I'm not a Corbynista, other than when I joined the Labour Party in the early 1970s, at Hornsey and Wood Green, there was a young guy who was the constituency secretary, whose name happened to be Jeremy Corbyn, and he signed my form. But we've worked together ever since, and I know that Jeremy is passionate about Palestine, but we adopted the idea that it would be good to have Palestinian flags. We had 1,500 Palestinian flags that we were giving out to the delegates as it went on and so on, and there were queues of people wanting to get the flags to go in, and it was just unbelievable to see. I mean, what you got was when the motion got moved by a young guy from Harlow who did an incredible job, the flags just started coming up, and then there was just like this wave of Palestinian flags going across the whole of the conference. And actually Jeremy almost had to be physically restrained from joining in. He didn't have a flag to wave. So, but actually it has transformed the mood inside the Labour Party in terms of its attitude to Palestine and discussion on Palestine. And it's sort of like we've broken out of the silence that there was there. And I mean, just I think it was great in the hall. I was getting texts from Gaza and the West Bank and so on who were watching it saying, this is amazing. And to see the change, I was talking to our partners in Palestine and elsewhere, and Palestinians in this country over the summer, and they were saying, what's happening in the UK? What's going on? It feels like Palestine has been forgotten, that we've been pushed under a bus and nobody's interested in what's going on anymore. And it was true. There was hardly, if you think of the events that have taken place this year, the US moving its embassy to Jerusalem, the demonstrations for right of return march and the people being shot, and some of those marches and protests that we were organising over here, we couldn't get a single Labour MP to come speak on those demonstrations and so on. There's been the Trump decision on stopping funding to UNRWA. There's been and then the nation state law. I mean, there have been huge, major things taking place, which are actually trying to disassemble any prospect of peace in Palestine and the Middle East. And you couldn't get, I mean, we tried to get editorials, comments into The Guardian and elsewhere. It was so hard to get any interest in anything other than the debate that was going on around the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. And we have been saying, and this is my message if you like, that we need to talk as a trade union movement, as a labour movement about Palestine and what's going on. There's no need for us to talk about history, about what's gone on in the past. If you look at equality, human rights and international law, the things that are taking place now, we need to bring to the public's attention. And why I'm sort of focusing on that, and this is great that you've got a public meeting, I think we have an opportunity in the labour and trade union movement to make this not just a one-off event where there's been a nice flag waving ceremony at the Labour Party conference, but for us to actually organise and mobilise so that Palestine becomes the core international issue for the labour and trade union movement in this country, and it is every area and so on. So there were two CLPs that put forward motions, one on UNRWA, one on constituency labour parties, and one on the shootings. But actually, there should be a discussion going on in every constituency labour party, in every trade union branch going on around the country. And I was asked to say things that you can do, and I've just come from a meeting at Unison, and it's the same things that I've said that people could do. One, and I'm sure you're all great, and I know that some of you are, and thanks to the local PSC branch and the work that they do, it's years and decades of work from the Solidarity branches that has enabled us to go. But if you're not a member of the PSC, the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, join. Because we don't live on air alone, we can't operate and organise without members and without the money, and it's easy if you go online. But most importantly, we were given a strategy by Mustafa Barghouti, who is one of the leading Palestinian political leaders in the West Bank. And he came over and he said, what you need, what we need is multipliers. Either people who've been to Palestine come back and talk about it, or people in your world actually talk about Palestine. So I've taken that and translating that to mean is in your family, in your pub, in your branch, in your local labour party, in your trade union and so on, raise and have a discussion about Palestine and what is going on. We're quite happy as the Solidarity Movement to provide speakers, information, briefings, videos you can download and show and watch. But what we need to do, because people think it's a really difficult and complicated issue to talk about, but actually if you stick to the core issues of talking about Palestine and what's going on, there is so much for you to discuss. And if we can get that happening, you could see, if you like, Jeremy's face, but actually what you want is genuine pressure from the up, the trade union and the Labour Party, so that there is not just emotional support for Palestine, because what we need to do is shift that emotion into resolutions and policy that means that a Labour government would, in due course, apply real political pressure to Israel to make sure it complies with international law. And that's through the boycott, divestment and sanctions campaign, which is having a global impact and is beginning to make a difference. And I want to do for time.
You've got 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. So, if you look at the issues, you know, if you take Gaza and the right of return march that were taking place, that was one of the texts of the motion. It was the Israeli snipers were given instructions to shoot and kill demonstrators who pose no threat to the state of Israel. They're behind a barbed wire fence, they're behind security protections and so on. And in the resolution, and I think in terms of boycott, divestment and sanctions, why on earth are we selling and buying arms from Israel? That's something which the motion called for a freeze on, and we are campaigning for both in relation to Hewlett Packard and HSBC. And the last thing I really want to talk about is the the right of return of refugees and the nation-state law. Because there's a lot of worry about people saying, is Israel a racist state? Can we talk and describe what's going on? The nation-state law that was passed during this year has said that it is only Jewish citizens of Israel that have the right to self-determination. 20% of the population has had that right taken away from them. And if you look at the practices of set the roads, if you look at how the walls are operated, I take the view, if Israel operates in a racist way in terms of its laws, its actions, what it does on a day-to-day basis, we should have no fear in calling that out and describing it for the racism that it is. And if it operates in an apartheid way, then it is an apartheid state. And Palestinians have called for it to be reviewed under the Convention on Apartheid, and I believe the Labour Party ought to support that call, and trade unions ought to support that call, so that there's a real examination of that that's going on. And the UNRWA decision, you know, the UN Relief Agency was set up in 1948 after 700,000 Palestinians were expelled from their land, taking their keys with them of the houses to which they wanted to return. There are now 5.4 million Palestinian refugees in Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, in the West Bank, in Gaza and so on. And Trump's thing was, yes, it's a humanitarian disaster. The UN says by 2020 Gaza will not be fit to live in. But actually also what he was trying to do was to say, as he was with Jerusalem, we want to take that issue off the political map, that we are wanting to de-recognise the fact that there are Palestinian refugees that would ever have the right to return, and we aren't going to deal with that issue anymore and deny international responsibility for it. It was meant to be a temporary period, and it's now been 70 years. If you go to the refugee camps, these aren't camps, these are towns, these are areas with buildings and so on, and we have, and it's the last point I'll make, as a country, it's our fault. We were there, you know, if you look across the map and see the straight lines, they're ours. It was us, Balfour, that gave away our land that wasn't theirs to give away. We, I think, in this country have a real responsibility to make sure we never let the British government off the hook until there is a free Palestine. And these sorts of meetings are going to enable us to build that pressure. And I think there's going to be a rethinking of strategy in Tel Aviv, I suspect, that all of the efforts to silence everybody have actually, I think, backfired on people and actually made people more and more committed to speak up and fight on behalf of Palestine. And I think we've got a golden opportunity now, after the TUC and the Labour Party, to take that out into areas that we've never been before and build support for Palestine that we've never had before. So thanks for coming tonight, but also make sure you go off and become multipliers in your own area. Thanks very much.